All right, here we go, getting started. Welcome. Episode 12, Soulful Talks with your boy Marcus Jones and your girl, me in the house. Excited to be here for episode 12. We are getting into yoga today. So this one, we're getting into Sandy B's territory up in here today. So I'm really excited. I think this will be really cool. Yoga is something, and you can give your yoga background right now, but I think yoga is something that has been really cool to watch you start to develop into. And then for myself, starting to learn a lot from it as well. And I guess adapt. I think I've adapted some good, healthy habits and practices based out of yoga. By no means do I consider myself a yogi, but it's definitely impacted our life and our marriage, I think, at large. Yeah. So, babe, give the people your yoga background. What interested you? This is going to be like an interview today.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, I'm going to interview you on all this stuff. But what would you say, before even getting into how you started, what would you say is the initial thing that interested you about yoga as you started?
Right. I would say, I think the first thing that drew me in was the fact that I had never experienced something that my mind could be so like quiet and where I wasn't worrying or anxious, you know? So I think like finding something where I could find peace in that, even if it was just 30 minutes, an hour, whatever, I was like, oh my gosh, like people need to like experience this. And that was back in high school, you know? And then I think another part of it too was I never felt like I was good at anything. Like, you know, people are good at sports, like I'm good at soccer, I'm good at drawing, I can sing, you know. I never felt like there was anything specific, but I was like, yeah, I'm really good at this, you know. But I feel like when I did it, it was so natural for me. And I think maybe because like obviously flexibility isn't all about yoga, no, but for me flexibility has always been very, very natural since I was really small. So I think to be able to do something that just felt so natural for my body, I was like, this is the one thing I can do. You know what I mean? And so I was like, this is it. This is what I gotta do. But I would say like that was a secondary thought. It was more so like, holy cow, like I feel peace for once in my life. You know?
And as you're saying that, it almost, or not almost, it does remind me that it's the only activity that literally is centered on like quietness and peace and stillness and, you know, oneness with yourself and with God. And I was just thought about that right now when you were talking. I was like, it actually is the, like, I can't think of, at least off the top, I can't think of another activity that is literally solely based on just you quieting your mind and connecting with yourself, with God, with intentions, with whatever. So
I don't think so.
That's crazy. I mean, because meditation is obviously, and we can get into the distinction of meditation and yoga, because a lot of times people think, when they think yoga, they think of someone sitting down and meditating. Right. But obviously, yoga isn't someone sitting down and meditating. That's a part of it. It's a component. But people meditate in, like I said, I meditate daily. And I don't consider myself a yogi. I practice yoga, but again, I don't consider myself a yogi. And so those are two different components that we'll talk about later. But so Sandy B had a nose itch and she wanted me to cut it out. So we cut out the nose itch. But so I feel like we might have touched on your journey with yoga and how you started before.
A little bit, yeah.
But is there anything that you think is really crucial, or anything as a preface to what we talk about today that you want people to know about your yoga journey, how you started, why you continue, all that?
I did share, right? I think I did share like how it all started
high school, Desert Vista, Amanda Go.
Yep.
Shout out to you.
But I would say, I think like a really key thing is start as soon as you can. And if you have kids, I would say like start them as soon as possible too, because there's so much power in teaching them mindfulness, you know, to live a mindful life. Yeah. To kind of like get to know, because I feel like with yoga you get to know yourself a little deeper, you know. You start to like tune into what your body is saying to you. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, everybody's body like speaks to them, and your body lets you know when something's wrong. You know what I mean? Right. And that's like the power of yoga. It's that it teaches you to be so in tune so that you can listen. Yeah. When it lets you know certain things, you know? Absolutely. So I feel like the younger that you start, obviously like you can start at whatever age. You know, you could be 50, 60, 70 and start, and you'll still get the benefits, you know? But I just feel like if you start your kids, or you yourself, you know, start when you're younger, it's just like a muscle that you develop that gets so much stronger. Yeah. And can save you so many headaches in your life, I feel like, you know, because then you know, like, it teaches you to honor yourself. It teaches you to honor your yeses and your nos. And to stand ground and, you know what, this isn't beneficial to my well-being, so I'm not going to do this. Right. And I think that's so powerful, especially in the world that we live in. Absolutely. So if kids can learn that, oh my gosh, like their life will be 10 times better. Right. I think.
It's the practice of accepting who you are, where you are, when you are. You know, it's not forcing yourself. I think that what you're saying right now brings me to that thought of it really teaches you to be okay with the moment, which is present. What meditation is based out of, and everything, which has been the biggest impact to me, is as a man in the 21st century, you're often told or taught to go, and you have to do, and achieve. And it's really interesting because when I read scripture, I don't see Jesus as that person. No. You know, I don't see Jesus as somebody that was always on the move and always trying to achieve, and who else needs to be healed? Like, let me heal this person, that person, and who else do I need to go talk to, and who else do I need to prove wrong? He slept, he retreated, to be with the Father in his own time. And there's so many of these things that, again, I think even the discussion about yoga and quote unquote religion is a really important discussion too, that maybe we can touch on today, but it's a much longer discussion. Yeah, for sure. But I think that was one of the biggest things for me watching your journey, is starting to realize, like, because I feel like I'm a pretty open person. I like to think I'm a pretty open person.
I think we both are, yeah.
And whenever you bring me something, there's a few times where I'll be like, oh my gosh, okay. And then, like, say when we're watching a movie, right? Like, you'll be watching some, like, movie that I'm just like, this is so stupid. And I'll watch, but then I'll take something out of it. Like, I'll be like, okay, I'll sit down and watch. And I'll be like, dang, this, like, stood out to me. This is really deep. And with yoga, that was one of those situations where when you were getting into it, I was like, oh, that's really dope. Like, that's cool that you found your thing. Like, you touched on that a little bit where you're like, man, I don't feel like I have my thing yet. Mm-hmm. And when you started stepping into it, I was like, that's so cool that you're finding your thing. And the more I learned, the more I heard you talk about what you were learning, I was like, yo, people need to hear about that. You know, like, people need to hear everything that you just said needs to be taught. And I don't even think I've thought about it like that, where you just said, like, the younger you can start these practices. And I don't even think it's necessarily, like, yoga is super beneficial to the body and the mind, the soul, all of it. But also just the practice of mindfulness in general, like a lifestyle of mindfulness is so crucial for kids to learn, for everyone to learn. So when you think about it as your family learning that, like, imagine how different the family dynamic would be, which is what I think God intended for the family dynamic to be, much more mindful of how we speak to each other, how we treat each other, how we spend our time with each other.
Intentionality,
Exactly, you know. So I think that's really dope. Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to share on that?
Nope.
So yoga uses Sanskrit. Did I say that right? Sanskrit. What is, fill us in, what is Sanskrit?
Sanskrit is basically originated from India, obviously, but it's like the old, like...
It's like an ancient...
Right, ancient text, I guess,
right.
or writing, you know. I don't know if it's used as much anymore, honestly. Amanda would be a good person
right.
to talk on this, because I think she's actually like learning how to write.
Oh, wow.
She's doing her master's, you know, as like a yoga philosophy, I think, or yoga therapist.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's as much as I know when it comes to Sanskrit. I don't necessarily use it as much like in my classes, because I just know the names of the poses, right? And like some chants that they say, or like certain things, you know, like Shanti meaning peace, and I can't remember any of the other ones, but it's basically like the original language that yoga originated from. And they say that speaking the names or saying the yoga poses in Sanskrit basically has a different energy to it that helps the pose. Sometimes with yoga, it can get a little woo-woo for some people.
Right.
So that's a part where I think that's like the nice thing about it, though, you know, that you can pick and choose how you want to use it. Right? Some people obviously use it as in other gods and Indian gods, you know, and just different things, you know. But I think that's like the nice thing about it, is that you can use it. And if in your mind, you know, this is my direction, this is what I'm giving my praise to, then it's like, it can be towards anything, you know, like it can be, some people praise themselves, you know, some people praise the universe, some people praise Buddha, some people, you know, it's just different. And it obviously gives you the room to, like, obviously for us, it's God, you know, so like it gives you the room to sit down and meditate on God's word. It gives you the room to sit down and tune in to see if God is speaking something to you, you know. It gives you the room to sit in gratitude towards what he's done in your life, you know. So I think it's very open, which I think some people would say is like dangerous, you know. But I think if you're rooted in your own faith, then I think it's a really powerful tool.
Yeah, for sure. And all the studies that I've done, because I was really curious about how does yoga apply to faith, right? How does yoga apply to scripture? Is there scripture on yoga? Because yoga is a ancient tool / technique, and I think a lot of people they can treat it like it's a religion of its own, you know. And I do think of it as a tool. I do think of it as a technique. And in all the studies that I've done, it's really interesting because I almost haven't found anyone or any pastors that have spoken on it that are like, absolutely not. Like, it's of the devil. It's, you know, it's this, it's that. As you said, when you start getting into chanting certain things, and, you know, now you're getting into an area that's like, okay, it's, now you're messing on a different level, a different plane, like a spiritual plane that can get, that, like you said, that can get a little dangerous. But in terms of the art of yoga, the art of lengthening, the art of being in tune with your body, the art of meditation, the art of intentionality, these, I would say, principles, the principles of yoga are something that I genuinely, in all my time of studying a little bit, hearing from you, and then just praying and using it and seeing what techniques I can use and adapt into my life, I'm really pretty convinced that I'm like, more people need to be doing this. And again, it's not like you need to be this like, I am yoga, you know, it's not that. It's just the idea of, once you unlock that level of your life, you unlock the level of like, why do we go so fast? Why are we forced in this society to go? Why do I think so little about what I give myself to? Why do I think so little about how I speak with people, how I carry myself? These things that really we just zoom past in life. Because in America, or I should just say Eastern culture in general, Eastern society, or should I say Western, I'm sorry, not Eastern. In Western society, that's my bad, we're really, really focused on achievement. We're really focused on accomplishing.
Like, and no sleep is what equals
right.
success.
I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like, I'm busy. Right. I'm always busy.
Oh gosh.
And not only do I not see that in yoga, not only do I not see that in scripture, in the life of Jesus, or even feel it in our life when we're operating a certain way, but it's like, I just don't think we were made for that. I just don't think we were made to achieve a bunch of stuff and make a lot of money and then die.
Right.
Like, we're hardwired for connection. We're hardwired to be here with one another. And I think yoga gives us many tools to be able to be with one another a lot better, I guess. Yeah. So I think that's really cool. For yourself, what are some of the most we've touched on it a little bit, but what would you say, before we get into a few other questions I have for you, what would you say are some of the biggest personal benefits that you've experienced from it?
I think for me, like the mental side of it, like the mental clarity, the finding like the presence, in your life. I would say like that's probably the biggest, being able to like process my feelings in a different way, or like not getting as angry over things, that used to like rub me. What?
I need that in my life right now.
They used to like rub me the wrong way so much. Like, it was just easier, I think that part, and obviously like the body side of it, where like your body just like feels better when you're in a consistent practice. You start to see like you start to see kind of like your flexibility increase, your muscles start to change, because I think that's another big part, is people think, oh, yoga's super easy, that's not going to do much for me, that's not hard,
Right.
And then people take it, it's like, this is so hard. It's
extremely difficult. It really is.
But I think the hard part is that you're sitting in a pose that's using all your muscles when you're doing it correctly.
Yeah.
And like you're being told to basically like sit in that pose but stay present and not think, how do I get out of this? When do we get out of this? It's to find your breath. It's to find peace in that. And I think the beautiful thing of it is that it teaches you how to handle life, right? It teaches you that when craziness is going on all around you, you sit in the present moment, you breathe through it, you ground, and then you move through that moment, as opposed to the world is crazy, so I'm crazy too, and everything is chaotic in my life, so I'm gonna be chaotic,
Right.
So it's like on your mat, you're learning this in your body, but in a sense, in the bigger picture, it's subconsciously teaching you how to handle your life when chaotic moments arise, which is for everyone. Like, we can't escape chaos. Like, no matter who you are, no matter how much money you have, no matter how grounded you are, like, we all experience chaos.
Right.
And so I think like that's the key, that it's like we all need this. Right.
And I think I am, again, your boy is thoroughly convinced that every teacher, almost every person, period, needs to, like, especially if you're in a leadership role, you either need to go through like some type of yoga teaching program, or not even yoga, but just like a mindful, like, you need to go through something like that. Because again, like, stepping into fatherhood, and I know you feel this in motherhood, like, there are so many things, and we had this conversation before, like, I need to heal some parts of myself before I take on caring for a human being that has no concept of time, no concept of personal boundaries, no, like, like a baby just like has access to you and has no concept of not having access to you. Think about, like, even like mothers more so. He's like, I need to eat. Regardless of where we are, regardless of, obviously we've been fortunate enough. One of the blessings of COVID actually has been that we haven't had to be out and run into the problem of, oh shoot, he needs to eat. What do? We're sitting outside. It's Arizona. It's hot. And freaking out because we've just been home. But it's like, he has no concept of,
right.
I can't pull my breast out right now for you, my G. Like, you know, like he's like, I'm hungry, you know, nor does he have a concept of what time it is, or we're doing a podcast. Like, he's like, when I want to go, I want to go. When I want to do what I want to do, I want to do it. When I want to stand, I want to stand. Even though he can't stand, he's like, stand me up. And you're like, you can't stand. You're physically not capable. And he's like, I will stand. You know? And so it's a crazy test of, and I was telling Kyle this the other day when we were texting, like, parenting is, it finds a way to find that one button that hasn't been pushed in a long time and not push it, but like
jam it.
Yeah, like crush that joint. And so again, but
that's why
stepping
they say,
into
like,
it, go for it.
That's why they say, you know, your kids or your children are your biggest teachers.
Right, absolutely.
And it is so true.
Absolutely. They have a way of identifying that. And, or not even, I shouldn't even say identifying that, they have a way of pulling it out of you.
Right.
Any unhealed, unsolved area in you that you don't know how to cope with yet, they will, like, the way a baby is, because again, they have no concept of personal boundaries or any of it. So usually with another human being, you'd be able to say, I need my space.
Right.
You'd be able to say, not right now, I need a moment. With a baby, they're like, I don't care.
But I think another thing with, like, babies is that they also, like, they teach you how to be childlike again. You know?
Oh, yeah.
And they teach you the
how beauty
valuable
of the simple
it
things.
is to be, like, present.
Right.
You know, for them, it's like, this moment is the only thing that exists.
Right. The simplest
things,
like
too. What you do later on, what time they eat next, like, what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going, like, that's not a worry. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's, like, even in scripture, it says, be childlike.
Right.
Like, obviously not in the immature way, you know, but, like, in the sense of you love and you love deeply. You know, you are present. If you're playing with a toy, all your attention is in that toy, you know? And that's, like, I think that's a big, major part to how we should all live our lives.
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
hard.
Right.
But I think it's
extremely
super important, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And so again, I think in parenting, in leadership, in any way, shape, or form, we have to go through some type of healing process first.
Oh, yeah.
To double check with ourselves to say, are you good? And if you're not, what do you need before you start this process of leadership? Again, not just parenting, relationships. It can go into anything. What do you need before you start this process?
Right.
You know, I'm like, that. You know how many relationships would change? You know how I would have changed as a boyfriend when we were younger if I had the tools. I mean, what teenager has the tools, right? But if I had the tools to, or even somebody to say, hey, what do you need before you do this? Is there anything you feel like you need that, because don't go searching for it in them. Right. Because if you do that, you're going to end up disappointed every time, because she's not there to fulfill the void that is inside of you. Right. That's your thing. That's not her thing, which is a whole nother podcast in and of itself. Yeah. But again, I think you going through your yoga teacher training was crazy, because you were talking that they were guiding you guys through stuff as teachers that I was like, every single teacher on the planet should be trained in this. Like, the verbiage that you use when you're teaching, that was stuff that I'm like, yo, every dance teacher needs to be taught this stuff. Oh my gosh. Every teacher in general needs to be taught the importance of when you're guiding other human beings, or in close capacity with other human beings.
Well, I think it's like super important, you know, because it's like, I think we were talking about this actually like a week or two ago in the car, and we were talking about just like the power of our words, right? Which I think is another podcast in and of itself, because we have a lot to say on that. Yeah. But just like briefly, you know, when you're a teacher or you're guiding someone, or you could be a nurse, you could be a school teacher, you could be a dance teacher, a teacher of any kind, you know, you could be the manager of Chick-fil-A for all I care, you know what I mean? It's like, we all use our words, and if you have a position where you are leading people, like specifically, I think if you're leading people, say a personal trainer, dance teacher, yoga instructor, like physically, it's like that person's body is basically in your hands. Yeah. Their well-being is in your hands, you know? So it's like, are you really going to guide someone when you don't even know the anatomy? Right. Are you going to guide someone when you don't even know what they've been through? So you don't know what words could be triggering. So, like, you shouldn't say certain things that can bring up past trauma, because with the way the world is now, there's so many people that have been through like I mean, we've all been through trauma, you know?
Right.
But it's like there's some people that have been through crazy trauma that it's like, I won't even say it because like if someone listens, you know, they'll be like, oh, that's triggering.
Right.
But like just certain words that you would say that are just like, oh my gosh, like that brings back to this, you know?
Right.
So I think that part is super important.
Right.
But I think also like circling back to the connection side, something really powerful that I remember my YTT teacher taught us, Monica, is her thing. They used to teach a lot with adjustments, which I love yoga adjustments. Obviously there's people that don't like them, but and with like how things are now, I don't think people are allowed to just adjust anymore, which I understand, you know, but now you can put little cards and you ask for permission before. But one of the things that she said is in Shavasana, we were taught to give adjustments of the neck and the shoulders.
Right.
And I remember her saying, you know what, there's people that have not been touched, like lovingly, in a caring way, in a gentle way, their entire lives.
Right.
There's people that all they know is abuse.
Right.
Touch as an abuse, you know? There's people that, like, they don't know that touch can be anything else other than that. You know? So, like, that, seriously, I remember, like, hearing that and just being so sad. And thinking, oh my gosh, like, I need to offer this every single time. And I have. Obviously, I haven't taught in person in a long time now. But when I did, I would always offer adjustments. And people would always say, like, that's my favorite part. Just because you're sitting there, you're breathing with them, you're watching their body cues, you know? And they're able to, like, drop deeper. And for some people, like, I didn't know someone could, like, just lovingly, you know what I mean? Be like, I see you.
That's what I was going to say,
It's like, and I see you, and I see you're working, I see you're in this class. And for some people, that's like, they don't get that their entire lives. Which I think is like the thing that I was thinking right now on that note was like the power of touch. Because again, we're not intentional about it. We're not mindful of it. We think, again, we just think life is just happening around us and we are just happening with it. And that's the way it just goes. We don't know the power of my words, the power of my presence, the power of my touch, the power of how I embrace somebody. Because again, especially in the dance world, are you kidding me? Oh my gosh, that's another one.
Like, but do you know how many dance instructors, like, or how many, let's go lawsuits, right? How many lawsuits have been filed for dance instructors that did things inappropriately, right? And so it all goes back to, again, number one, being healed of your own ish before you step into something like that. You know, somebody's waking up. Number two, understanding the power of the position that you're in and the lives that you're impacting. Because again, if I know the power of my touch, right, and that's something that I think is the most powerful about adjustments. What you're saying about adjustments, when you're adjusting somebody and helping them adjust to a yoga pose, the ability to be guided lovingly and respectfully, to where again, because even the word touch, right, even when you say people being touched, it's like draws on a negative connotation to the word touch. Because how many times do you hear that negative connotation used in that word? But it's like, but it's not a negative word. It's like like, that's why I use the word embrace, because it's like to
that's a good way.
Lightly like embrace someone with your hand, like, again, far from a space that would make them feel uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form. Even when I'm choreographing, when I'm setting a piece, like, I'll put my hands on like one of my students' shoulders to move them, but there's a lot of times where I have to remember like saying, hey, is it okay if I move you? And being like, okay, cool. Or if we're doing, one thing I always remember to do is like, if we're doing something and their arm is like in the wrong spot and I'm trying to guide with my words and they're not getting it, I'll say, is it okay if I lift your elbow? And I'll just like move them real quick. Or is it okay that I put my hand on your shoulder? Because it's like, for a lot of kids, they're like, yo.
Well, the permission part is huge. You know, you need to ask permission if you're entering anyone's little personal
their
space,
bubble,
you
right?
know what I mean? Like, you have to ask.
And I think that it's also about creating the space too, because I know that you said a lot of people don't agree with adjustments. I'm not in the yoga community. Just from being your husband, from the outsider perspective, my thought is, well, that's why you have to create a relationship first. You know, like, because I'm not going to walk into a room full of people I've never met, teach them a yoga class and say, I'm going to adjust you, and start putting my hands on their neck and their shoulders and their ribs and above their hips and like high up on their thigh to adjust. I'm not going to do that. It's like, I'm going to create this space for a long time, not one class.
Before they feel comfortable.
Yeah, for a long time, and let them build trust with me. Don't just assume that they trust you, but build the trust, and then one day you're able to say, is it okay if I adjust you? And then they're like, oh yeah, sure, it's Sandra, sure.
Which I think is like, at least in my personal classes, that had actually happened to me, you know, where I would teach a class, you know, and people would always be like, oh, thank you so much for that adjustment, that was great, that was beautiful, I was able to drop deeper, I love that, you know, and they hear that and they're like, oh, what is she taught? Like, I want that. So at first they would never, you know, because my thing is always put a hand on your belly if you want to be adjusted. And if I'm going to adjust when they're in a yoga pose, I'll say, is it okay if I move you? If they say no, that's not personal for me. Like, that's your space. You don't, okay, fine. You know, I will use my words to help adjust what I see needs adjustment. But if you say yes, then okay, I'm gonna adjust you. Obviously, there's boundaries. You know what I mean? You would never like touch someone under the armpit. You know what I mean? Because it's like, that's a sensitive area. You know, like certain things, right?
For sure.
But then later on, they see that and they're like, oh, okay, like I want to experience that, and then from then on it's like, okay, I want that now. You know? So
absolutely.
I think that's like super powerful as well.
But even then, it's based out of their desire. You know? And I think there's so many, as we've seen now, there's so many yoga instructors that have the wrong intention behind what they do. That
because it's a popular thing now too. You know?
For sure. And so a lot of people, it breaks their trust, and there's a lot of people with a lot of wounds in a lot of places that you're not responsible for, but when you're in that space, you are responsible for navigating around them. You know, like, so if somebody has a trauma or a trigger in a certain area, can't necessarily say completely like, okay, I didn't cause that, because now, like you said, now it's such a popular thing, and there's so many instructors that have caused those traumas that it's like,
unfortunately.
But say just for the example that I'm giving, like, I didn't, as the instructor, I didn't cause these traumas or triggers or anything like that, right? Then I'm not responsible for them, but I'm responsible for respecting them. You know, I'm responsible for respecting their boundaries and their triggers and being okay. Like you said, if it's a no, it's a no. And that's okay.
It's not personal for you, Which I think, like, briefly also, that's also super important. And I kind of get rubbed the wrong way when I see people becoming yoga teachers overnight. When I see that they did it over a weekend. I'm just like, how could you learn all the anatomy? You know, like, obviously we don't learn, like, deep stuff like nurses and doctors and physical therapists and massage therapists. It's not that in depth, but I think at the same time we are learning, you know what I mean, what the muscles are, what muscles are activated, what muscles are contracting when you're in a pose, you know. And I think when people are becoming teachers overnight, you're missing that part, and you're missing the part or the module where you're working on yourself, where you're crying in your class because they just tapped into something you didn't realize was a childhood trauma. When they've just tapped into
or something that's just healing in general.
That you had no idea, you know. You miss going through the part of, like, healing yourself first so that you can help others heal. You know what I mean? Because, like, I just think it's very hypocritical to be like, I'm a yoga teacher and I haven't done the work myself, but let's put you to do the work.
I don't know what the Sanskrit names are. I don't know how to guide somebody with my words. I don't know how to be intentional. I don't know how to guide you mindfully. I don't know any of that. But and that's the same thing with teaching hip hop. Like, it's the exact same thing where it's like, a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm a dance teacher now, and it's like, and Kat said this the other day in a Q&A that we were in. A lot of teachers, like, if you're a young teacher, make sure you're trained in, like, at least some form of how you're guiding people psychologically. Like, don't just walk in and think you can teach because you can show some dance moves.
Right.
Like, that's not what it's about.
It's so much deeper.
But so wrapping it up, I think overall, I feel like this is something that we should do a part 2 of as well.
For sure.
Like, there's so much to unwrap still.
Yeah.
But overall, so today we talked about
we didn't
mindfulness.
Even get into like the physical.
Right, not at all. And I want to also, for today, to end today's, what would you say, and we can unwrap it next week, but what would you say is the main way that yoga has helped with our marriage? Like, certain yoga principles have helped with our marriage.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Just kidding. I would say the being present factor has been huge, because I think we both can now be like present with each other, you know?
Right.
And set everything else aside. So it's like my attention is devoted to you and you only, right? And yours is devoted to me and me only. And I think that's like a big part to any relationship, but especially your spouse. If there's any person in any relationship that you're in that should feel seen and never question it, it should be your spouse.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that part has been huge for our marriage. I would also say like the mental side of it, you know, I think that's helped with arguments. Because I think we know ourselves and we know how to listen in.
Yeah, big time.
Where it's like, I don't think we've ever yelled at each other.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
You know? I may have wanted to say some cuss words to you. But did I? No.
Tell
in my head.
Tell them. Big facts.
But
you ain't experienced that, you are not in a real relationship.
I'm sorry. But I think like when it comes to arguments, we are able to kind of like, I need to take a moment. Like we know when we need to step out. We know when we need to breathe. We know how to use a tone of voice with each other so that we don't say or do something that is gonna hurt you or cause some trauma for each other, you know? So I would say that those are the 2 biggest ones. Obviously there's more, but we can talk about those next time, but those are for sure like the biggest, I would say.
Alexander Gray's getting fussy.
He said it is time.
He's getting fussy. So we're going to wrap it up there for today.
We'll do a part 2.
Part 2 next week. With this one, we're going to do an attached...
A nice surprise. I'm just kidding.
We're going to do an attached meditation. So you guys will get a meditation either at the end of this episode or as its own little short episode. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you guys for listening. Soulful Talks, episode 12. AG, anything to say? Big facts.
All right.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Stay healthy, stay happy, stay soulful. We love y'all. Peace.
Bye.